the ESG framework is meant to be adopted to the company's organization's needs because the needs of one company are very different from another. I think the concept is called double materiality, where you look not just at how you're affecting the environment, but also how the environment is going to affect your business, right? Yeah, so it's a two-way thing. You look from inside outwards, like your effect outwards, but also like how outside factors can affect your business.
That's inside out and outside in.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Hey guys, my name is Elaine. I just did a podcast for Beneath the Impact podcast on ESG and sustainability. So be sure to check it out. Bye.
Hello, hi guys. Welcome to Beneath the Impact podcast. In today's episode, we have brought you a sustainability guru because we'll be talking all matters sustainability and especially for profit organization. Anyway, I'll just let her introduce herself. Over to you.
My name is Elaine Kubitu. I work in ESG and sustainability. I currently work for a private equity company, so mostly work with portfolio companies to help improve their ESG and sustainability performance. I really look forward to this conversation today.
So in terms of today's, maybe you can tell us in terms of, what is sustainability? Maybe especially for businesses, what is sustainability? What does it entail?
Sustainability in itself is such a broad term because it encompasses not just the environment, of which most people, when they think about sustainability, they think about the environment and mostly about trees and forest. But sustainability as a whole is quite broad, right? There's like the environmental aspect, but also there's the social aspect. And when it comes to companies and even countries, there's a governance aspect, right? So the environment, as you know, it is mostly about. Right now, climate change is a big thing. So when you talk about sustainability from an environment point of view, we're looking at things like carbon emissions, taking care of like coastal ecosystems. We are looking at extreme weather conditions, all of that. And then when it comes to social aspects, we're looking at, for companies, that's how you manage your workforce, how you engage with your stakeholders, other stakeholders, for example, the supply chain, but also the communities in which you operate. And then governance is mostly about the leadership and how the leadership is able to manage and control and identify risk and push the organization or a company in the right direction.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So a question is, I think for every forum that I am in, I realize that ESG is currently a buzzword. And one of the things that I've realized is because probably there's a shift. Previously, when you are starting a business, you are mostly focusing in terms of your shareholders. How much profit are you creating for them? And those shareholders, they will just give you like bonuses, and also for them, they go with dividends at the end of the day. But currently, we are also looking in terms of it's now broader from shareholders towards stakeholders because what I've realized is a shift, especially in terms of stakeholder expectations. So can you tell us more or less why this shift of stakeholders has made maybe ESG more important, or rather, what are these shifts that we observe?
Yeah, you're very right in terms of before or like a couple of years ago, because ESG is not really new. It's something that's been there for years, probably starting in the 1990s, if not earlier. But now, especially in the emerging markets, it's becoming more and more popular, or you will hear about it more in conversations or different stakeholder forums. And one of the reasons is because things have changed. People are more aware of what's going on. As I mentioned earlier, things like climate change have become more common. Every day you'll have news of flooding or drought or famine. And people understand, at least to some extent, the interconnection between what businesses are doing and how that translates to climate change, for example, right? So one of the reasons why, for example, this is becoming more mainstream, it's because consumers are becoming more conscious about, like, they're demanding more from businesses. People don't want to work with companies or organizations that are polluting the environment, right? Some of the, let's say, oil companies get a lot of lashback from media because, some of the activities they're doing are really detrimental to the environment, right? So that's one of the reasons why ESG has become a bit more popular, because businesses have to do better because consumers or their customers are asking them to do better. The second thing is because of regulations. Regulations that are being created either at a country level or at international level. For example, in the EU, are forcing businesses to implement some measures in their businesses to help reduce their sustainability impact, or just to say it more generally. So it's not just the environment, again, it's also the social side of things. And then the communities in which these companies operate as well, they'll be like, if you're a construction company, for example, and you want to build, I don't know, a road somewhere, you can't just go and build a road without consulting with the people that project is going to affect, right? Because those are interfering with people's rights and freedom. So then it stops becoming just about the business creating value for its shareholders, but more about engaging with all these different types of stakeholders to ensure that everybody is happy with what you're doing. Because once everybody at least is happy, then the business also has better returns, better reputation, and has a social license to operate.
Awesome. Yeah. I believe we all want better return, have a social license as well as make an impact, because an impact is more or less also changing lives in where we are operating. So basically, I think probably we can go deeper in terms of looking at the components of ESG as a model, or rather as a, let me call it a model for now.
Framework,
yeah. So as a framework for business sustainability, as you had mentioned before, what I'd picked is most people look at environment and equate it to climate. Though from my little research that I've done, I've seen the environment being broader than climate itself, and also climate having like two or more things. So can you let us know, in terms of especially a business, what areas of environmental factors that we can consider?
Okay, so looking at just the environmental angle, it changes as well from one business to another, because the ESG framework is meant to be adopted to the company's organization's needs, because the needs of one company are very different from another, right? For example, a company that deals with telecommunication or construction is very different from a service-based company. Let's say a company that does software solutions, for example, right? The environmental aspect of it will all be different. But generally, when you're talking about the environmental angle of ESG, we are looking first at direct environmental impact. So if you're doing construction, it's how are you affecting the biodiversity of a place? Are you cutting down forests? Are you creating dams in a river that will affect downstream operations, for example? So that's like more direct. But for most organizations, the most common themes will be around energy management, because your source of energy, how you power your operations, then affect your emissions, or CO2 gas and other gases, greenhouse gases that then lead to climate change. You'll also look at waste management, because how you manage waste, again, contributes to emissions. So I think, those would be the two main things. It's mostly about the energy and waste management, and then you tie those to emissions, which then tie to climate. So climate change is a broader topic. But then most of the activities that we do in the office kind of directly contributes to the climate angle.
Yeah. I think climate in itself, it's much broader, and even in my experience, I believe what you have mentioned, it's more or less looking on how companies, that is, or rather businesses, can help mitigate their contributions to climate change. Though also there is also an angle in terms of how climate change is affecting the business operation. So that's more or less on resilience of the business. For example, after floods happen. For example, here in Nairobi, we are notorious with floods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during those rainy days, how will these floods lead to operations, business operations closing down, and also things such as drought, for example. So when there's drought, if you are an agricultural based company, that will also lead for you not to make income because you won't get the raw materials that you need, and you need to plan for that, especially at a risk management kind of aspect. One other thing which I believe probably in an environmental, I believe you've already mentioned, it's more or less on biodiversity and land management, or rather what we would call natural capital in some places. Yeah, so in terms of how do you affect, how are you using the land? For example, for, what do you call them, these guys? Construction companies and agricultural based companies.
Yeah.
How do you use the land? Waste management, I believe you mentioned. How does it? But one other one which I believe probably might be crucial is water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because most of business operations require water.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at the rate that things are happening, water is becoming more scarce. So probably we can jump into, is there anything you want to add on to that before we jump into another aspect?
Yeah, just to add to what you were saying earlier, I think the concept is called double materiality, where you look not just at how you're affecting the environment, but also how the environment is going to affect your business, right?
Yeah.
So as you said, you're not looking at how is my energy consumption or water consumption bad for the environment. It's also because ESG is about risk management, or largely about risk management. You have to know, you have to look out and be like, oh, we are a business that operates in agriculture and water is becoming more and more scarce. So how do we make the business resilient in case there's going to be a drought, right? So having an ESG framework or a sustainability framework helps you prepare for these potential outcomes of climate change, for example. Yeah. So it's a two-way thing. You look from inside outwards, like your effect outwards, but also like how outside factors can affect your business.
Yeah, that's inside out and outside in.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Then let's look in terms of social factors. I think from what I've grasped from the earlier conversation, or rather from the beginning of this conversation, in terms of social, we have aspects of your inside out. So from inside, it's more or less human capital management, and also diversity and inclusion and equity. So can you tell us more about those two? Why are they hot as they come?
Okay. So internally, from the social aspect is about your employees, right? How you manage them, things like workforce satisfaction. So, and why that's important for every organization, right? For any company, any business, your employees are really the backbone of what you're doing, right? Without them, you wouldn't be achieving the result that you're doing. So it's very important that, first of all, their needs are taken care of. And the basic level of that is making sure you meet regulatory requirements. I think in Kenya and in most other places, there's usually like a labor act of some sort that stipulates if it's the working hours, making sure there isn't any child labor or forced labor that's happening. So there's a very basic level of that, and like a minimum wage for each country, or sometimes counties or states. So that's like the very basic foundation. But for you to really have an engaged and happy workforce, it's always good to, first of all, provide things that help motivate like your workforce. So if it's benefits such as healthcare coverage, contribution to pension funds, for example, just providing them some financial security and financial well-being. But outside of that is having mechanisms which employees can report any concerns that they have. Because we always say, just because you're not receiving any feedback does not mean like things are well. It's better to receive more feedback and then rectify the things that you're getting concerns about, because that's where you're sure that they're happy, right? The moment you're not receiving any feedback, you should be worried about that because you don't know what the state of things are. So yeah, having what we call a grievance mechanism is really important, and making sure these mechanisms are accessible to your employees at different levels. If you have to make it, for example, anonymous, that's always helpful because sometimes employees are not, they don't feel confident enough that there won't be retaliation if they report something. And especially in the service industry. Again, it's where there could be potential exploitation, either directly from managers or just other employees. So having those systems where employees feel very comfortable. And then with this, again, in many places is part of regulation, but allowing them to associate with unions, right? Because it gives them the freedom to have another person speak on their behalf. But basically, the internal social angle is just about employees and how do you help develop them, providing skills and training opportunities, because then the more training and capacity they're building, that's always better for your business as well. And in terms of a business argument that you can make, if your employees are happy, it reduces the number of people that are leaving your organization. It cuts the cost of having to continually keep hiring new people. It cuts the cost of training new people. So overall, it's good for the business.
Yeah. Happy employee, happy pockets.
Yes, exactly. Happy company.
Yeah. So yeah, that's important, or rather, I believe probably it's good to learn. I would love also to hear more in terms of diversity. Probably inclusion and equity. So why should companies have a diverse set of employees? What benefits does it have, especially for the company as well?
Yeah, so I think when you talk about diversity, it could look at different things. But I think for most companies, it's still at the gender angle of diversity, which means equal or fair treatment to both men and women. But also you can expand that depending on your place of operation to include other aspects like race, disability, religion. So bringing people of different ethnicities and backgrounds from different contexts. And the importance of this is, first of all, you get to have diverse opinions about different things, right? When you have people who are very similar, then most of the time the business is very likely to always have one direction of doing things or one way of doing things. But the moment you bring people with different opinions and ideas, it creates like innovative ideas, shared ideas that accommodates like different angles, which means also like in terms of the services or products you're able to come up with, will be able to cater to a bigger audience, right? Because it's not maybe just like men or women creating a product that they have not integrated feedback from another group of people. So that diversity in workforce can help not just have that unity among employees, but also help shape like business in positive ways.
So from what I'm hearing from you, if you have a diverse, what do you call them, employees
Workforce,
and maybe even board members, you can have like a diverse perspectives, which also can lead for more product acceptance in different markets. And so in terms of, I think that's inside out.
Yes.
Maybe now we can look in terms of outside in. In terms of social aspects, one is in terms of how your business, your product and services is affecting the community around you. What probably in terms of us, because we have been on social impact space for a minute, we define social impact as something that change your life. So maybe a service or a product has changed your life. So from this angle, I assume social or other community impact of your business is more or less how does your product change the lives of the community around you and also the ones that you serve. So can you shed a light on ESG perspective, whether I'm making good assumptions or the wrong ones?
Yeah, no, they're the right assumptions. when you think about the social aspect and community impact of businesses, it's basically what you've said. How are you changing the lives of the people in the communities, in areas where you operate? And for some businesses, that's very easy, right? Because you are literally your business model, if, in as much as you're making profit, is also changing the lives of people. So in the Kenyan context, for example, when you think about Safaricom or Equity Bank, their product in themselves have impacts, right? So if it's Safaricom, it's about financial inclusion or financial access to almost everybody in the country, right? If you go to any place in Kenya right now, people can make M-Pesa transactions anywhere. Before that, the level of financial inclusion was really, really low, right? So there are businesses where it's very easy to say that they have like social impact because the product or the services they offer are directly creating that. But for other businesses that, let's say, manufacturing, I don't know, something, it may be a bit difficult to show that, right? But then for these other businesses that don't have that, where their products and services don't have that impact, they can go out of their way. And this was originally what was CSR, right? Because then you can create programs, for example, education scholarship programs, where either for your employees or the people around you, you provide education opportunities for people who would otherwise not attend schools. You could partner with health institutions to provide medical services or medical camps. So your social impact or your community impact doesn't have to be limited to just the services that you directly offer. It could be something that you do out of your way. And the benefit of this, again, is like good reputation, because the moment you see how a company is helping the community around them, that not only creates like this positive image about the company, but also helps build the brand.
Yeah, that's true. And also, as you are talking, I thought, for example, if a company does what you call CSR, or from my side, I would say corporate philanthropy.
Okay, cooler terms.
Yeah, so if a company does the philanthropy aspect or CSR aspect, if that community benefits, we'll be seeing also aspects of maybe even they can get workforce now, more skilled workforce from that community, even in the long run. And also, if the community is happy, that means also the company is in a happy environment, which also can assist them to flourish.
Yeah.
But if the communities around you is have issues, or rather they're disgruntled, even for you to scale your business sometimes has hurdles which you need to skip in terms of a risk management aspect kind of thing as well. So that's good. Let's now talk about governance, because I believe that's a huge topic. But from my little research for this podcast,
Little research.
So in terms of governance, it's more or less how does the company, or rather an entity, because for governance it can be a company or rather a business, or even a government institution in that case. How do they operate in such a way that they ensure that the environmental as well as the social aspects are moving in a correct format? So can you tell us more about governance aspects, or in this ESG? Am I right, or rather, am I even biased in some sort?
No bias. Governance is always a tricky letter to address in ESG, because people understand it very differently. But I like to say governance is basically about good leadership, and it's about responsible business practices and how those are managed at the highest level of a company or organization. So that's at the executive level, but also at the board level, right? Do they have proper controls in place to make sure that the business can identify and manage risks that come to the business is exposed to in a timely manner, in a responsible manner, in a positive manner, right? So having things like a code of conduct for the business that stipulates how the business operates, how it's going to interact with different stakeholders, for example. Having policies that help the business know how to run. So this could be, when you look at the financial side of things, this could be about anti-bribery, anti-corruption, anti-money laundering, policies. So I think it's just like the principles, the principles that guide the business on how to operate. And then how, as you've mentioned, how you integrate the environmental and social aspect into these like principles that the business has, right? Because if at that level of operation, the company has committed to making sure they have minimum negative environmental impact, and they are committed to ensuring the stakeholders they work with are taken care of, then that's good governance, right? So I think governance is just good business practices, and having those practices formalized at the highest level of leadership, which is the executive team and the board.
Yeah, awesome. So from what I'm hearing, it's more or less on policies, procedures, and protocols.
Yes, and systems and structures. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and also in terms of also risk management aspects, especially in things that might affect the business.
Yeah.
So how do they that? So it's quite interesting. Maybe what are some of the strategies, especially that we can utilize? Because if, or rather in my mind, if the board members are not acquainted, or rather they're not knowledgeable on ESG, for example, it's less likely for them to make a good policy, or rather even make a policy.
Yeah.
And or if they make a policy, it's less likely for them to make a good policy on that aspect. So what is the, rather, how can these governance people, board members and senior management get up to speed in terms of ESG and what benefits it gives to them? And so how do you foresee that happening?
So I think one of the challenges of having buy-in from leadership and board level for ESG matters is the fact that it feels like it's a burden to a company or an organization, but that's like far from the truth, right? Because as you've discussed, like there are lots of positive things that come from ESG, but being able to sell that to leadership or to the relevant stakeholders that will ensure like the governance structures are put in place is really important. And for someone who mostly understands business language, telling them about social impact or how you're supposed to help your community may not be something that they will directly understand or jump on, right? But being able to change the language of how you present why it's important to take care of ESG matters in business terms is one of the ways to help like leaders understand why it's important. For example, if I go to the CEO of a company and tell them, you need to update to solar energy because it's good for the environment, the likelihood is to be like, no, like we are already doing what we're doing and that's good for the business. There's no need to do that, right? But if I create a business scenario where I'll tell them by changing to solar, you're going to save this amount of money because, again, that's the language they understand, then it's easier to get buy-in from them, right? And then it's also trying to force them. Sometimes you have to force them or like push them to go into like for trainings. Because that way sometimes they see the benefit of like these things without having to come. Sometimes like there's always internal pushback, but the moment they're able to get either external training, they see the benefits that ESG could have on the business. I think those are the two main things, like be able to present your case for sustainability in language or terms that they understand, which is mostly a business language, and then look for training materials or opportunities that mostly caters to board level executive team members, and there's plenty of training opportunities out there, because then when this training is offered, it's also offered in a way that they understand why it's important for the business.
Awesome. So I'm getting one, selling the benefits,
Yeah.
either saving costs, earning more money.
Yeah, better
And-
employee engagement and productivity.
So selling the benefits,
Yeah.
especially for ESG, and also the second one is in terms of capacity building, either training aspect, enforcing them.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm looking in terms of two more questions. One is in terms of regulatory aspect, because probably it's not in Kenya yet, but especially looking in terms of external markets, whereby we have in Europe,
Yeah.
even in UK right now, and Western world especially, we see a lot of ESG integration, or rather within the regulatory aspect, whereby companies need to report on ESG.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of that, but also we are looking in terms of voluntary reporting aspects as well, whereby, for example, in Kenya, I understand Safaricom is one of the companies that does that in terms of reporting on ESG, and also in terms of also the, what do we call them? These communities for businesses. So, for example, there is one UNEP Financial Initiative, UNEP FI as a
Yeah.
UNEP FI,
FI. Yeah.
as a sustainable business aspect into that, whereby companies commit to that and report, especially towards achieving the Paris goal, because they always tie back to that. So I believe that's in terms of coordination aspect. So can we have more? Are we seeing this coming, especially in Kenya, or rather even if it's in Western world? How is it affecting businesses in Kenya as well?
Yeah. So the ESG or sustainability regulatory space is constantly changing, mostly influenced by the EU. So there are lots of regulations. It's like, I think people call it the alphabet soup, because there's so many terms. It's like SFDR, CSRD, CCCR. Like, it's just like so many regulatory items that have come up, especially in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years. And the effects of those will be felt worldwide, even in Kenya, because when you think about like companies that export products to the EU, for example, then they are required to have some level of disclosure in terms of their product. So even if like Kenya in itself or a lot of the emerging markets do not have those regulations at a country level, they will be affected by the global shifts in the regulatory space, right? So basic level of disclosure may be things like CO2 or carbon emissions for your product. It could be a verification that you don't have forced labor or child labor in your supply chain, because that's another tricky part of ESG or sustainability. It's not just your business, but also how you work with your suppliers and other stakeholders in the supply chain to ensure your products are made in ethical ways. There's a lot of bad things that could be happening in your supply chain, even when you're an ethical business. And to some extent, you have some responsibility to make sure that you have some level of requirement that your suppliers need to meet. Yeah, but in terms of coming back to regulation, Kenya has not developed anything major yet, but I think it's in the works. Because if you look at something like the Climate Change Act in itself, requires disclosures from companies in Kenya, but mostly the ones that are high emitters of greenhouse gas emissions, right? So even just taking that as a beginning point, it's important for all businesses, not just the big companies, to start thinking of how do we ensure, like, if a regulation was to come into force next year, that we are ready for it, right? So it's starting to create like the structures that are needed. If it's like data collection template, because again, as you say, if if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, right? Because you don't know what exactly you should be improving. So I think that's something that is going to just get more and more stringent. And it's important that businesses are prepared for it and start creating the systems to help them meet these regulations, because then the effect of not meeting them are not good for businesses, could lead to things like being fined, which is, again, bad for business, bad reputation. Like just customers don't like brands that are not compliant with different regulations. So good. It's good to be prepared and ready, because it's something that's going to happen for sure.
I think that's quite crucial aspect. Maybe as we finalize, finally. So maybe where can a business start in terms of if they're interested to do ESG? What are these first steps that they should do? Or rather, what these key steps that they should do so that at least they can integrate ESG to their business?
So first it's just the curiosity and willingness to want to do it. That's the first step. But technically the first step would be conducting a materiality assessment, which is basically looking at your business and deciding what are the most important topics from a business perspective, but also from a stakeholder perspective, right? So when you conduct a materiality assessment, you ask yourself, for my business to be successful, what are the key areas that are important to me? So that could be things like energy management. It could be about talent attraction and retention. It could be health and safety at workplace. But then you ask yourself, what about for my stakeholders, who are your customers, your investors, and the communities you operate in? What are the most important things for them, right? So you rank all these materials, and then, because sometimes you could end up with so many topics that are important for your business, you have to prioritize which ones make sense for you. And even after you prioritize, again, you have to now start breaking them down, because ESG as a whole, it's quite broad, as we've just discussed, right? So you can't say, I'm going to deal with all the social things and I'm going to deal with all the environmental things. You have to start slow and you look at the low-hanging fruit, right? This could be, we're going to improve our energy management system by just making sure we switch off the lights when we leave the offices, for example, right? Or we are going to try improve water use efficiency so we can reduce our water usage by X amount of money. Or we're just going to start by creating training for employees so that they understand why we are doing what you're doing. So just like, first of all, understanding what's most important for your business, look for somewhere to start. Of course, collect data to help you track like progress that you're making. And then you continue building up on this to the point where you have like mature systems and people understand why the company is doing that. Because there's different levels of, I guess, ESG performance. You could be at a basic level, which is, I make sure that I meet all the regulatory requirements, but I'm doing nothing more. And then there's like, I say, like an in-between where you're doing slightly more than what's required of you. And then there's like the leaders, the people will go out of their way to be like, oh no, we make this product that uses a lot of energy. We are going to completely change our business model and transition to a better product, right? But this is a journey. It's not something you start from 0 and go to 100 real quick. Yeah, but you start small. You find the things that you can do if needed, and where you can, you bring in experts to help you create better systems or to design better products. But it's a journey. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
As you're talking, I think where they can start, get 3 or 4 points from it.
Okay, good.
So be curious. So maybe start learning more of ESG, then do a materiality test or rather assessment, whereby you can understand what issues are affecting your business and prioritize. Then start the action. So maybe create policies, structure systems, then measure.
Yeah. And then report, of course.
So those are the 5 key pointers from this discussion. I think next time probably we shall have more conversation, probably because one topic has come into my head is more on product use and product life cycle, etc. But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, that's a big topic.
Be sure to, because I've seen if you open it, it's a can of worms on its own. Then be sure to subscribe and even share if this is your vibe. Thank you for tuning in. Have a nice time.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Beneath the Impact, where we go beyond the numbers and narratives to uncover what really drives change. If today's conversation sparked a thought, shifted your perspective, or started a question, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode, like, subscribe, leave us a comment, and join the conversation online. You can find us at beneath.the.impact on all socials. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep digging beneath the impact.